All right. Good evening to everyone who is in India, but good morning to others who are joining in from elsewhere. So, warm welcome to everyone to this very special edition of the Curiosity during quarantine events that we are having. Maybe some of you know, we used to have this KAAPI with Curiosity events at the planetarium in Bangalore, and KAAPI is coffee in Kannada, and have been very popular, and we have been holding it in conjunction with the Nehru Planetarium of Bangalore. But due to the events of this year, we have moved online like many other such events, and we have temporarily dubbed it as Curiosity during quarantine, all with a K. And now we have Kolam during quarantine, also with a K. So that's today's topic, and it's actually very special occasion for the KDK, because this is the first time we are having like a joint talk, and one by an artist and one by a scientist, mathematician. So we'll see sort of a nice fusion of these two aspects of human thinking, and I'm really looking forward to this talk. I just wanted to say a little bit to people who are joining for the first time about ICTS. ICTS is the International Center for Theoretical Sciences. It is a part of the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, and we are in Bangalore, the third center of the TIFR, and our mandate is, apart from our own in-house research, we also organize programs in a variety of areas in mathematics, theoretical physics, quantitative biology, and various disciplines which can kind of broadly come under the heading of theoretical sciences. And we have moved many of these activities also online, which actually allows for much more participation. So if you're interested in our events, please look at our webpage, and you will find a very interesting set of programs going on. There is a full calendar now of online events. We hope that maybe by middle of next year we will be back to the physical in-person events, especially for the KAAPI with Curiosity. But let's hope that can happen. I also wanted to mention that all the previous installments of the Curiosity during quarantine, as well as KAAPI with Curiosity, as well as all our program lectures, are all available on our YouTube channel called ICTS Talks. You can either search for it directly on YouTube, or you can find it from our webpage. So if you like this particular event, you can watch others as well. And there's again a wide variety of topics that we cover in these outreach events. And you please tell your friends and others as well. And even those who may have missed today's talk, the links will be put up very soon on YouTube and our webpage, so you can share them. So with that, maybe I think the formal introduction to the speaker and so on is I'll hand it over back to Anupam to carry on with the program. But on my side, let me welcome Claudia and Oscar again. Oscar has been to the ICTS campus. In fact, as he just reminded me, it was just this year, earlier this year, that he came, and we were talking at that time, in fact, of this, and we had thought of the idea of having an actual exhibition by Claudia in the ICTS campus and so on, and having an event, but we hope we can do that later sometime and welcome them in person to Bangalore. But in the meanwhile, this will be like a teaser or a kind of a trailer. So thank you again for agreeing to do this event. So Anupam,
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Professor Gopakumar, for the welcome address. I'll ask Professor Pranav Pandit to introduce the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh, for the introduction, and thanks, Anupam. As Rajesh already mentioned, we have a very unique event lined up for you today, which is going to bring together math and science on the one hand, and anthropology and art on the other hand. So we've been looking forward to this. The planning has been in the works for a long time. Actually, as Rajesh mentioned, we were going to have a physical event here, which will have to be postponed because of the pandemic. But I do encourage you anyway to treat this as though you were in one room and ask as many questions as come to your mind and participate. So I will tell you shortly how to ask questions during this talk. But first, let me introduce the speakers. So we have two speakers today, as Rajesh mentioned. It's unique also in that respect. So our first speaker is Claudia Silva, who is a photographer and videographer. She has studied anthropology and dramatic art and has been trained in communication skills in children's education. So the presentation today is based on a project titled Kolam, an Ephemeral Women's Art of South India, which she developed during travels to Tamil Nadu between 2012 and 2020. So it's been a long period over which this has been developing. The work that she's going to present today is based on audiovisual research on traditional practices in different parts of the world and their anthropological value. So her work is focused on the relation between art, education, and science, and has been exhibited in several places around the world, several leading institutes around the world, including the Institute of Mathematical Sciences in Madrid, the University of Porto, Wilson College at the University of Oxford, the Simon Center for Geometry and Physics of Stony Brook University in New York, and the École Normale Supérieure in Paris, and the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid. Claudia is originally from Bogota in Colombia, and she moved to Spain about 20 years ago, where she currently lives in Madrid. Our second speaker is Oscar Garcia-Prada, who is a research professor at the Institute of Mathematical Sciences of the Spanish National Research Council in Madrid, working in the field of geometry. He obtained a doctorate in mathematics at the University of Oxford and held postdoctoral appointments at the Institut des Hautes Études Scientifiques in Paris, the University of California in Berkeley, the Université Paris-Sud, before holding positions at the Autonomous University of Madrid and the École Polytechnique in Paris. In 2002, he joined the Spanish Research Council and has been very actively involved in collaboration in the field of mathematics, particularly Indo-European collaboration. Apart from doing mathematics, he participates regularly in public outreach activities on mathematics and their interactions with physics and music, and has collaborated with newspapers such as El País, El Mundo, and Spanish Radio Exterior, and the Spanish television RTV. In addition to his mathematical work, he also carries out musical activities and is a singer specialized in early music repertoire, offering recitals in several countries in Europe. So it's a great pleasure to have both of you here. We've been looking forward. It would be, as I said earlier, it would be much nicer to have you in person, but unfortunately, COVID-19 has thrown a spanner in that. But it's really nice to have you here for this online talk. So, yeah. And so then without further ado, let me hand over to Claudia, over to you. We can start the talk.
So good morning, good afternoon for everybody. And thank you for your time, for joining us in this beautiful activity. We are very happy to have the chance to share this project, not in physically, well, kind of physically, by this platform. So first of all, I would like to thank the ICTS team, who were very concerned about doing this project, even though that we couldn't do it formally there. And especially to Pranav, who already made the introduction, and also to Rukmini, an old friend. She used to come to do some research here in Madrid, and we met and we started to talk about this research I was doing. So thank you very much, and also to Professor Rajesh, also who made the introduction. And so, well, we'll start this presentation. So as Pranav said, the context of all this project is part of the travels that Oscar and I have been doing to India, especially to Chennai in Tamil Nadu since 2012. And it was a part of this European, I will read it to say it right. It was part of the European collaboration project on modular spaces in geometry. But Oscar will say more about this. So we'll start traveling around this 2012. And I was really fascinated about what was going on. I mean, not just to travel in a different culture, but I was very attractive about what I'm going to show you now. With this, everything started with the sound for me. And what was it? It happened that very early in the morning, as I guess many Indian people are looking at this presentation, at this Kidiki. So could be that you are very used to the sound of the brooms in the morning, but that was very new for me. So I was fascinated at 5:30 in the morning when I heard this brooming and the water falling. And I was curious, but as I was not in my place, I decided to ask to the people of the bed and breakfast where we were staying, because I was kind of lost on what was going on. So people were very, very kind at me, and they explained me that it was an activity made by women all around the city every morning before sunshine. So then I decided that I was going to go outside very early in the morning every day. Well, we did it in our first visit, because we were having like a yoga classes, so we had to walk around 6 in the morning. We had to walk to the place. So I start to see the whole complete ritual. And I was kind of wanted to approach to the women I saw, but I was not so sure about it. But for my happy surprise, I found that everybody was very nice, and women were very, very happy to share what they were doing, and they were trying to explain me what was all about. So I start also walking around the city. So I have to say Chennai is a safe city to walk. Not so safe if one wants to cross the street, because as for me the traffic is kind of crazy, as could be in Colombian traffic. But finally I decided that I can do it. So when I start to walk on the city, I found these beautiful paintings on the floor, and I was amazed that they were so mixed and so perfectly matched. That they were so perfectly matched on the city, that I wanted to research a little bit more about it. So the first part of my research was a visual research. At that time I was traveling with a very small camera, a pocket camera, as you can remember we used to have before our mobiles. So I started to take some pictures, as you can see, and they were so perfectly matched at the entrance of every house that I was really curious about what was going on with this. So we have very close friends from Chennai, actually Professor Ramanan, which is the colleague of Oscar. So his wife, Anu, she was my first, how to say, my first person who introduced me in all this profound content about what was Kolam about. So I found that there were many shapes, and I started to research online, and I found more literature than I thought. And I found a very specific researches focus on anthropology and mathematics. But as mathematics is not my path, so I leave that to Oscar. And I will just share with you these few things about what it is related to women tradition, to ephemeral art, some part of education, and also a few anthropological aspects. So on the first part, we have, well, I found a beautiful book written by a teacher. She's a teacher of religious studies in the United States. Her name is Vijaya Naragajan, and she wrote a book. What is the name of the book is Feeding Thousand Souls, and it's a very nice and very accurate work about many aspects, even mathematics, anthropological, and also artistic aspects on Kolam. So that's one of the best bibliographies you can find if you like to read more about it. Okay, so the point is that I was fascinated that every morning before sunrise, I found out that in old Tamil Nadu, millions of women drown columns on the ground with this white rice flour or color powders. Through the day, their drawings are walked, rained on, or even cars passed on them, and the columns eventually disappear. So this activity begins again every day and every day. So this ephemeral aspect, as you can see in this picture, it's one of the components of what we, well, in Western perspectives, we have to understand or to try to explain to ourselves the world, we do some kind of categories or compartments. So this ephemeral part is related to what is vanished during the day or during the years. So as we can see in this picture, like when we are passing from summer to autumn and then to winter, all the leaves are falling from the trees, and then it's like a sense of what's life, no? Life. So one day we are blooming, and then next day we are in some other mood. But more of that is that there is beauty. There is beauty in all representation of nature. And this kind of column, the one we have here, I want to say exactly the word of this. Let me see. It's called Kana. Yes. This. Sorry. Okay. So there are different kind of columns. So this kind of column we have here, as you can see, is made of geometrical figures, like this one also. You can see it is made out of squares and triangles, and also these parallel lines. And I want to show you also this one. So as you can see in this second picture, you see there are the triangles, the squares, and on the further column, you see there are some dots. So the one you see on the back of the picture, the one that is with the dots, is the most traditional Tamil Nadu column. What I found on my research is that why the column is so how to say, as a potent aspect, such a strong aspect of the Tamil Nadu culture, is because the columns are performed every day. It doesn't mean that there are no other paint floor traditions around India. Sure, there are, and there are some more in the northern part of India. They are more close to the Buddhism tradition, where, and I think it's the most well known in the Western, this kind of paintings that are made with this powder, and it's more closer to religious ceremonies. But the point with the column is that it's that even though that is a ritual performing tradition by the women, they are made at the entrance of the houses, but not just for religious matters. I mean, they can be, for example, what I was explaining you about this, that they are made on the north of India. They are usually performed by priests on the temples. But this one, the columns are made by the women every day, and it doesn't have to be tied to any kind of particular situation. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a festivity or it's a everyday activity. As you can see, as the part of the ephemeral, it is this picture, the car is just by the side of the column. And as you can see, it is in the entrance of the house. It is related to the welcoming of all human, not just all the human beings, but it's also welcoming all the beings, even spiritual and material, which means as many of the columns are made with rice, white rice powder, it is eatable. I mean, ants and small birds can eat it. Of course, there are many changes through the last 5 decades, and what I found out is that there are other materials used to perform the columns. So even chalk powder or another things made out of also of plastic. But the point is that the most traditional, which is still used in Tamil Nadu with this rice powder, it has the meaning of welcoming all beings inside the house. And it was very funny because I also read that many women said that it was also a way to prevent the entrance of ants at one's house, because if they are fed already, if they have eaten outside, so they don't have the need to go inside to find anything else to be fed. Okay, so these dots is the kind of the most traditional Tamil Nadu columns, which are, as you can see, that's something that I was really fascinated about, is the symmetry. And as you can see in this picture, the concentration that is needed to place every dot on the floor is amazing. I mean, after that, when the women start to pour the powder around, could be just uniting the dots, or to put or to pour the flour around the dots, it asks for a lot of concentration. And as you can see in this one, first there were the dots, and it could be placed, I mean, in this one, it was on an outside of the Mylapore temple, which is the, perhaps if you have not been in Chennai, the main Hindu temple in Chennai is in the neighborhood of Mylapore. And there are many traditional expressions cultivated around the temple. Music, and of course these all the religious and chants and so on. And also it was very beautiful to walk around the temple very early in the morning, not just because of the light, because as I understood, the temples were constructed with a specific light situation. And also because it is surrounded around and inside of these wonderful columns. So this is another one. Okay. So I will move to the next. This kind of columns, they are called, I mean, pulley column is the name of pulley is dot. I guess for you Indians, they know it better than I do. But the point is, with this kind of column, all the curves you see that they are around the dots are called can be column. Oscar will explain this better in the mathematical aspect. Okay. So in this picture, I wanted to show like all the steps, step by step, no, how it is the column made. First, what I was fascinated with the sound, and then it is like a close-up. And what we will see now is, okay, this picture was taken on the Kolam festival. So that was my second approach to the Kolam tradition. We had the chance, the very good luck to be at the Pongal festival in many of our travels. So in our first travel, I was invited by Anu, Professor Ramanan, to go to the Mylapore festival, where they have this Kolam contest. And we started to attend the Kolam contest in 2012, where it was our first travel. So I don't know if you had the chance to visit Chennai in this particular time, which is a very magnificent moment, because they have many cultural activities. Because of the Pongal, they have a beautiful musical festival, and also they have this Kolam contest. So I want to point about the Kolam contest, something that it is very interesting. What I found is that in 2000, around 2000, 2001, the government of Tamil Nadu, specifically to the government of Chennai, decided to propose this Kolam contest, because it was like kind of the tradition was just like falling apart, no? At that time I wasn't there, but that's what I read and what I found on the newspapers, that there were some columns performed at the entrance of the buildings, as Chennai now is a huge city, but there were not like a specific place to or bigger place to perform more elaborated columns. So they decided to propose this festival, this contest, in the Mylapore festival at the Pongal. And it was fascinating, and women were very, very happy to join it. And then it started, as you can see in these pictures, there are like small squares just marked for the participant draw their columns. And you can imagine for me as someone who was traveling for the first time to find these wonderful and sophisticated and delicate drawings on the floor. It was something that I said to myself, I really have to do a project on it, because it is something that unique, and that I thought that it was very beautiful to have the chance to join this, to share this women activity to the Spanish people, and we have been very lucky that the project has, as Pranav said, has been shown in some other countries. All around, people are just really fascinated about what's going on with this. So all these intricate figures, and one aspect that I was also very attracted of is to see that there were not just women performing this, that there were also one small place for children. So then I start to see that there was this really how to say, that there was really a desire to go on with the tradition, and what a best context to do it, which is like the Ponga festival. So we see it here. We can, in the Ponga, in this Malapur festival, in the context, we find a person from all ages. I mean, you can see very young little girls, young women, older women. And also I have to say, the last 2 years that I was at the Kolam contest as a photographer, not as a participant, I saw that there were men also drawing Kolam. I didn't saw many. I have to say, no, maybe one time I saw a doorman painting a Kolam, but I mean, one day in walking around Chennai. But what I wanted to point is that the last two Kolam festival, the last one was in 2019 and the previous one was in 2018. Well, I saw men that they have their own space in this Kolam contest, and it was very beautiful to see this joint activity, because sometimes we tend to think that if one tradition is developed or performed by one particular sector of the society, it cannot be shared with the other part of society, but it is not like that. I mean, we as a human are social beings, and tradition is not something that is fixed. I mean, tradition is something that moves, and also if at this time we can see it, know that there are many activities that were specific social roles for men or women, and now this kind of boundary is dissolving. So we have this, as you can see, the rice, the white rice powder, and children also. It was very beautiful with this picture that this boy wanted to participate, painted the Kolam, but at that time, this picture is from 2013. At that time, they didn't have this special place for children. I saw it the first time in 2014. So here we can see, this picture is from last year. And all the concentration and all what is needed just to put a dot on the floor and to measure all the distance and so on is just something that it is really fascinating. So here, as you can see, there is a mother just teaching her child. And this is from last year. Yes, it was my last column. And I saw these beautiful candles just placed in the middle of the columns. And it's, as you can see, the street, this column contest is made on the main street of the Mylapore temple, the Kalapashwari temple. Sorry if I didn't pronounce it very well. So they close like 2 or 3 streets. That's where they give the place for the contestants. So here you can see some more. And that's another variety of those are not actually columns. Those are also floor paints, but the original columns are those that they are made just with white rice powder. But those that are more colored inside, they are called rangoli. Rangoli, I think it's rangoli is the right. Sorry, I want to go back to show you just a little bit more of this. The rangoli. Usually what is characteristic of these rangoli paintings is that even though that they have this symmetric, as you can see, this symmetric in between all the different paintings inside, they don't use the dots as it is on the traditional Tamil column. What I was told about when I asked to the people, to the women performing this rangoli, they explained me that they were people coming from outside Tamil Nadu. Some people coming, for example, from Kerala or from the northern part of India, where they are more used to perform these malas, and it's very nice. So all these currently all these color powders are made from, some are just the powder treated in a chemical way, but lately what it is being done is that they at the temples there are many flowers taken to do the rituals. So these flowers are collected at the end of the day, and most of lately most of the powder used to decorate the paintings are made out of these flowers, the rest of the flowers. So it is also a cycle, no? It's a way to recycle what's given to nature and what it's putting on again on nature, putting on Bhudevi, which is the godmother, the goddess mother. So here are some other of these, the Kolam winners. So I'll move a little bit forward because I wanted to give just the right time for Oscar to talk. Well, this as I told you, this beautiful candles. Okay, I will talk a little bit about this education and tradition. As Pranav said in the introduction, one of my works are related to research on education. So I saw the potential on this. I was not the first one, but I also saw the potential on this column construction that I was very fascinated because the first women I met on the street, they were women that they had not what we can say like educated background. But what is an educated background? Now, if I can talk as an anthropologist, there is not we can say maybe an academic background, just going to school and learn how to read and to write. But it doesn't mean that these women performing Kolam, they have such a great, how to say, like a mental developing of these space aspects that I wish I could have it, even though that when I was in school, I had really difficulties, big problems with mathematics and geometry. Perhaps that's what my partner is a mathematician, I don't know. So, but I saw the potential on this because when in my work, when one see tools that can help children to develop some other aspect of consciousness, is not just memorizing what's going on. We try to collect these tools and to try to do some examples with to make some proofs with the children. So I saw it vividly. For example, in this picture is the house of a very close friend from Chennai. Here is the lady that works for her and her children and her girl, and it was so beautiful to see how the little one wanted to be in contact with the powder and trying to paint, and all the generosity of her mother, no? Just to giving her their own pot and giving her and the opportunity just try. And children, they learn a lot just touching, feeling. They don't need much concepts. So that's a very interesting tool. And what I learned is that it is already being used in some schools in Chennai and in other parts of India and also in the United States, because there are many Tamilian families that had moved to the States and also to England during, I don't know, maybe the last five last decades. And as this tradition is already in the mind and the body of the women, so they keep on performing columns on their places of where they arrive. And they also, in the schools where they have their children, they are asked to give some like a teaching on column. But it was very funny because what I found is that there are not like academic or written things about column as a scholar thing, because this is one of the anthropological aspects of column. Column is an oral and visual tradition. So now we can find online more explanations about it. But the way of how one generation passes to the next generation is just by practicing. It's just as you can see in this picture or in this one. And this one is a very nice one because it was in a Ponga festival, in a Kolam contest. And this is a Rangoli. Okay, so sorry, I'll go with this one. With this beautiful flower, which are also many of the columns are also representing nature aspects, like, for example, flowers, mango leaves, and also the most intricate with geometric things are just to get to give some tribute to Lakshmi or to Ganesh. Okay, so I was talking about the anthropological aspects. As I said, what happened with Kolam is that it's something that it's already not just in the culture of the Tamil Nadu women or Tamil Nadu people, it's also that it's already in the body of all the practitioners. So it is very beautiful to see how when, for example, like this lady, the one that I told you with the book, Vijaya Nagarajan, she found out when she was living in the States that her mother was performing Kolam every day, even though she was a child when they moved to the States. But then after the years, she understood that she had that information in her body. So for her was like to start to learn to perform the Kolam. It was something that was really integrated on her. Okay, this kind, for example, this kind of, this very interesting in this anthropological aspect is this kind of Kolam is performed not just as a daily Kolam. This one is specifically for a marriage. I think maybe a week or 10 days before the marriage, every day there are these very beautiful and big columns performed at the entrance of the houses. And a little bit further. And for example, this kind of columns, which are more related to nature, are part of the symbolical aspects of how one as a human being had the need of represent what is in the outside, in our outside world, what we see, to put on the material world, I mean, on the floor. So this is very interesting about Kolam, because Kolam, as you can see, is in the just in the very outside, in the threshold of the houses. So it is a symbol that marks limits in between the inside and the outside. What's going on inside the house has a limit, and what is going on in the outside of the house happens after the Kolam. So it's also like a place where a social life is becoming together. One can have a social life inside the house, but also we have a social life outside. And for women to go outside and paint the Kolam, it's a way to have a communication and a socialization of their art, of their ritual, and also it's a way to share their intimacy, which is something one can see when when one is close to a woman painting a column. So this one you can see there are candles around and all these flowers. And something that I always saw, it was the joy of women, even though some of them knew that I was taking a picture. I was trying to be very careful not to bother them and always asking if they want it or if they don't want it. But I saw something like joyful, very joyful, and very intimacy, joyful, concentration. And for me, it was very close to what happens when one is meditating. No, it's just to be present at that moment. Also, an aspect that I like a lot is that at the end you can find the columns placed in all kind of houses. I mean, you can see it in the outside of big buildings or houses in a big city like Chennai. But if you travel around small villages, you also see it. So it is like a tradition that holds together all women in Tamil Nadu. It doesn't matter what kind of social background they are. It's just something that unites all this women tradition and unite art in one expression, which is the painting of columns. Here's my friend Jajanti. She was trying to teach me how to, you will see how to paint columns. So I have a beautiful time spending with her at her place, and she was painting columns and giving me like the keys of how each woman is a world also in the way they perform and they paint their own art. This is kind of Rangoli around the city. And this is related, more related, as you can see, the broom is more related as the first picture I have. Okay. So, and this one, this picture, I like it a lot because this is a small temple for Ganesha. It is close to the main Kapaleshwari temple, but it is a very small temple. And I was really moved by the dedication of this woman. I went 2 or 3 days with her, and every day she was cleaning the floor and just doing her column with this such a big dedication that then I understood that all the ritual and the component of giving something to what one believe is important, it was just shown in the performing of the columns. Okay, so here I am with my friend Jayanti. She was trying just to give me the first keys with the lines. But then it seems that I needed to go back with the children, to go back to kindergarten because I was not really good at it. And then I finally decided that it was better to keep on taking pictures. And of course, I want to try to improve my columns, but I think what I can do now is just to place together all these beautiful columns and all this experience that I've been having in this time because now it's almost like 10 years on traveling to South India, specifically to Chennai. And this picture is just a collage or some of the many columns I've been picturing and taking in this project. And basically that's what I wanted to share. And I hope you enjoyed it. And if there are some questions, I will be happy to answer, or I don't know, we can do it now if you want to. So then I can give the word to Oscar.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Claudia, for the wonderful presentation. There are a few questions now, so maybe we can take a few quick questions now, and then at the end we'll have more time for further questions if people have not yet typed their questions.
All right.
So there's 2 questions which I will combine into, they're closely related, so I'll just combine them together. So Vijay Kumarte asks, or says rather, that there is an analogous art form in Rajasthan called Mandana, and where they use chalk. And he asked you to comment on that. And the other comment was, or question is from Suparna Sinha, who says there is some similarity between the Sona designs of Africa and Kolam patterns in South India. Could you shed some light if there is a connection between the two? So broadly, maybe even to broaden the question a bit further, I mean, I guess the question is across, in your studies of anthropological aspects of art and so on, have you seen similarities that transcend geographical and cultural boundaries, perhaps? I think Islamic art is another one which has repeating geometrical motifs.
Yes.
Maybe from anthropological perspective, it might be very different, I guess, in the sense that the people doing it are not. It's not, you emphasize the ephemeral nature of the kolam, whereas other art forms are perhaps not as ephemeral and so on. So yeah, so I'll hand it over to you to comment on that.
Thank you, Pranab. So about the first question, which is on Rajasthan painting. Yes, there are so many numberless expressions of these paintings around all Asia that, I mean, it's not what I am researching on. I am aware, I know about this Rajasthani painting, and also what I've been reading is that there are some painting made on the walls, not just on the floor, on the walls. But what I can mention about it is that I am aware that the north of India, there are many art floor painting, but it is not the issue that I'm researching on. I'm aware of it, and I wish I had time and the opportunity to travel to get more combined information about it. And there are many expressions about it. What I wanted to point about, what I was really captured about Kolam, it was because of the simplicity, and that they were, well, it's just basically the place where I've been in India, no? So not just the simplicity, but the ritual aspect, and that it was that it is this ephemeral art that is performed by women. I don't know what this art form from Rajasthan, if it's performed by women or men. Well, I don't care who does it, but what happens in Chennai is that it was particularly performed by women. On the second question, yes, about the Soma. Yes, I'm not sure if Oscar will talk a little bit about it, because it has another aspect that I'm not talking about this in this talk, but it is called in anthropology. There is a study which is called ethnomathematics. So ethnomathematics is the study of all these geometrical and mathematical expressions from cultures that they are not in the academics ways teach. So what it means, that for example, Kolam, as I tried to explain, it is a tradition that passed from mother, aunties, grannies, to the children, to the girls, also the boys, but the boys are around 6 or 7 years, they start to do other activities. But what I wanted to point is that in ethnomathematics, what we try to do in anthropology is to study these aspects that are full of geometrical and mathematical concepts, but we don't, when one see this, we don't just put it in a book. No, I mean, it's just a tradition that is passed from elders to youngest. And yes, the Sona, it's very close to Kolam. I mean, what I found in my research is that actually it is made in the same thing. I mean, there are some dots point on the sand, and then they start to paint with the finger or maybe with the stick, and they start to give it like the story of the triumph, or of the could be maybe some mythological thing, and it is just told to the children with the painting. So it's like a kind of connection of cognitivity and painting. So as they have the chance to do, not to have the TV, but they do this kind of drawings to give the impact in the mind of the children. And these Soma things, they have these Sona things, they have this sacred aspect, and they are performing particular times of the year, and when they have to tell a story to pass the tradition, because all these are oral traditions from one generation to the next. Okay, there is another question. I hope it is fine for the one who was asking.
Maybe there are many questions coming in, so I'll just maybe ask one more question for now, and then postpone the rest to the end of the
Yeah.
talk so that, in the interest of time, so that Oscar gets enough time. Shobana Narasimhan asks, do different communities in Tamil Nadu have different styles of kolam? I think I was told that I should always use double lines in kolam designs because that was traditional for our family.
Well, there are many kind of columns, and what I found is not just from different places of Tamil Nadu. It's just also different from one family to another family. So if you have two neighbors, they have different and particular patterns where they move and just expand it. So yes, you are right. There are not just one pattern. There are many patterns, and what I've been learning is that it depends on, even though, on the tradition of the family. So the one that I found it is the most traditional is the pulley column, which is the dot columns and all the curves around, or maybe the lines putting one dot, trying to put together one dot to another. But there are also this what I said at the beginning, I think is the Kanat column, which is made with these geometrical patterns. But there are many, no, more than one can think.
Okay, thanks for that answer. So maybe then let's then move on to Oscar's part. And there are many more comments and questions that have come in. I will collate them and try to ask them at the end. I think there will be questions then for both of you at the end of the talk. So over to Oscar then.
Thank you very
going
much.
to tell us more about the, I think, mathematical aspects of coding.
Thank you, Pranav. And well, I want to join Claudia in thanking the ICTS for having this activity. We wish we were there, but hopefully we will be able to do that in the future. And we want to thank Rajesh Gopakumar, for director of the ICTS, for his introduction, and Pranav Pandit and Rukmini Dev for inviting us. And the whole outreach ICTS team, Anupam and the IT support team, and of course, all the people that are connected for this event, and friends and colleagues. And I also want to thank Claudia for inviting me to participate in this project. I'm not a photographer, but I am taking photographs of her. This photograph is last year in Pondicherry. Actually, that was a nice expedition that that we took to Pondicherry, and this one was the previous year in Chennai in the Pongal festival. So, you know, we mathematicians like to define things. And so I cannot avoid to tell you what is a column. A column, I mean, maybe some people connected from other parts of the world that may not be so familiar, although they have seen the pictures, beautiful pictures by Claudia. And so just, you know, a column is a line drawing of curves and loops around a regular grid of points. That's the sort of thing that we have been looking at. And one thing that you always notice that there is always some symmetry in a column, and in a column. And there are many types of columns, and like lines without dots, line connecting dots, and free geometric shapes without lines or dots, very often with bright colors, as we have seen the Rangoli, and so the one that Claudia has mostly shown is the traditional South Indian column based on the grid of points, the pulley column. And some other columns are drawn in festivities and with themes based on nature, like flowers, trees, or some religious topics. or larger columns for special occasions. So I really like the moment in which the whole thing starts by putting the dots, the pulley, and we have seen the dexterity and the concentration that this requires to do this. Is really a fantastic meditation. It's a wonderful moment, and so very often this picture by Claudia, she already showed it. I like it very much, and it is very often you see a sort of a single, close, uninterrupted curve, an interrupted line, the KAAPI, right? Which means wire. So intertwining the dots. So we may refer to this type of column as pulley KAAPI column. Mathematicians like to give names also after we have defined things. And so I don't know if this is standard terminology, but this is, or a simpler way is to refer to it as a KAAPI column. And so, because this is a popular tradition, there are no written or verbally stated rules. But if you observe what's going on, you can realize some basic rules when women put a pulley KAAPI column. And for example, loop drawing lines and never trace a line through the same route. So you don't go twice through the same route. The drawing is completed when all points are enclosed by a drawing line, and arcs are drawn surrounding the points. A smooth drawing very often. And as I said, there must be symmetry in the drawing. Symmetry is a very sophisticated concept in mathematics that gives rise to algebraic structures like group and so on. But women and girls that perform this, most of them, many in rural areas as well as in urban areas, do not know about these things. They just know it, implicitly. They just know it internally, and they just do it better than even when you are a theoretician and you know these symmetries. Like I study these symmetries, but I am unable to do these things. So I'll focus in my talk in this presentation on these KAAPI columns, and in focusing on those that are created using a single continuous closed curve. Just one single continuous closed curve. Now, the curve may or may not intersect itself, right? There are many other columns that are made up of several closed curves and several lines rather than by a single. But I want to focus on the ones that are done with one line, closed line, or curve, whatever you want to call it, column. For some columns, if you just look at Claudia's pictures, or you go to Chennai or other places in Tamil Nadu, and you ask, is this column made with just one single curve? Sometimes it is easy to realize that it is just one single line. But for other columns, it is very difficult to know. And so now, how can you be sure by looking at a column whether it consists of a single line or not? So this is the answer to this question was given almost 3 centuries ago by the Swiss mathematician, physicist, and astronomer Leonhard Euler. Here's Euler. This is a very famous painting of Leonhard Euler. And he was not just a mathematician, physicist, and astronomer, but he was also a geographer, logician, engineer. And he, as far as I know, he didn't go to India, but he traveled quite a lot. He has spent a lot of his life in Russia and in Berlin also. But so he made many contributions to mathematics, physics, and so on, and been one of the most prolific mathematicians and one of the most important mathematicians of all times. And the one contribution that I want to mention today that is related to column is actually the creation of what is called graph theory. So let me explain. So this all started with a problem that was put related to a town in Prussia called Königsberg, and this is the Königsberg bridges problem. So this city, Königsberg, is set on both sides of a river, the Pregel River here, and includes two large islands. I mean, I don't know if it's still like that. I mean, this town that was at the time of Euler was a town in Prussia, actually dropped the P to become a town of Russia and changed the name to Kaliningrad. So I don't know if these 7 bridges are still there. But at the time, this was the situation. So there were 7 bridges. And so here's the question that was, people were asking themselves in, can one have a walk through the city, crossing each of those bridges once and only once? I mean, crossing all of them, but only once and only once. And so in 1736, Euler gave a negative answer for this, saying that it's impossible, and establishing the foundations of a very important mathematical theory called graph theory. So let me explain how actually Euler did. This is a wonderful illustration of how mathematicians sometimes work, just realizing what is essential and what is not. And so the first thing that, the first simplification that Euler realized is irrelevant. What do you do in each piece of land, right? There are 4 pieces, as I said. This is one part of the city, another one, and then there are these 2 islands, right? And so it doesn't matter what is how you walk in each piece. What is important is this, and the fact that there are here the bridges, right? And so this is one already first simplification. But what the next step, and this is the beauty of mathematics and Euler, is that the second simplification is that you can actually see this as a graph by associating to each piece of land a vertex, right? So like, for example, this here, this island is this vertex, this other part of the town is this one, this is this one, and this is this one. And then the bridges are just edges joining these pieces of land, right? So you can see how from this island, which is this vertex, emerge five bridges, right? So here you see 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 edges. So this is now, so Euler noticed that except at the end points of the walk, I mean, you can have a walk where you start in one point or another, or you just want to come back to the same point. We are considering both situations, right? And so, but the point is that Euler noticed that whenever one enters a vertex by a bridge, one leaves the vertex by a bridge. So hence, during any walk that you may have in this graph, different ways of walking in the graph that I just show you, right? Different ways of walking, then the number of times one enters a non-terminal is when you start or you finish vertex, equals the number of times one leaves it. So if every bridge has been crossed exactly once, then for each landmass, for each vertex, except for the one that you chose at the start and to start and finish, the number of bridges, edges touching that land, that vertex, must be even, right? That is the realization of Euler. And so now, since the number of edges touching all the vertices in the graph of the Königsberg bridges is odd, as you can see, I mean, there are 5 here, 3 here, 3 here, and 3 here. So then the walk is impossible, right? So you can spend your life trying to do this every morning, you can even jogging and so on. But Euler is telling you that that is simply not possible, right? And And so coming back to our columns, we can apply, so there is a theorem that emerges from graph theory that we can apply to the KAAPI columns that we were discussing, that for a single continuous line, the line that you do with the rice powder, that returns to a starting point. We concerned with coming back to the point. To be possible, each intersection in the figure, those are vertices, not to confuse with the puglia, those are the intersections of the curve, must have an even number of lines emanating from it, right? So just by looking at a column, right, you can actually see immediately whether it can be just done with a single continuous line, right? For example, if you look at this column, these are not the prototype of the KAAPI column, but you can see that it is when you count, all the vertices here have 3 edges emanating, right? And so this is just impossible. And you can see same thing here. Of course, here you can see that there's no single curve, because already this one is just a closed curve on its own, right? So it's a very wonderful test. And however, it is, this, when you have such a path, is called Eulerian for Euler walk, or Eulerian path. And so here's one of my favorite columns that when you look at it, this KAAPI column, you can apply the Euler's theorem to realize that indeed you can have a walk. You can do it in only one continuous line. However, in reality, when you see this being performed by many women in Tamil Nadu, I don't blame them, huh? But they don't do it like that. They just basically, perform one piece of it, then they just translate and rotate to come to this, and then they do this other thing. So just being aware of the symmetry, right, which is fantastic, and then complete it with this to finish by drawing this, the final curve that surrounds all these points. So in principle, this can be done with only one continuous curve. In practice, sometimes this is done in pieces. I would say from a certain, if Professor Euler was there, that he would say this is cheating. But and maybe in the Pongal festival, a mathematician should be hired. I volunteer to check if the Euler, if this is done appropriately. I'm of course joking. So this is what I explained. And so let me just, because it was referred previously in a question about Soma and so on, that indeed there are other traditions for example, in Angola, or even in the Vanuatu Islands in the Pacific, where designs on the sand are done also by continuous curves. So in that sense, the principle is very similar. However, some of the significance of this is in some places not quite the same. In particular, I was told that in some place, I forgot where, but you have to practice all your life, and this is done by men and women, because it is believed that when you die, you will be asked to perform one of these designs in some way, and if you cannot perform it, you cannot join your ancestors, right? So I don't think there is anything in Kolam really to that. But but the fact is that this principle of a single continuous line is omnipresent in many traditions. And as I said, Euler, actually Euler, to be fair, only proved part of the result, in the sense that he showed that it was necessary to have this even number of crossings. But then it was a century and a half later that a mathematician, Karl Holzer, a German mathematician, actually showed that it was actually sufficient to see that those numbers were even or whatever, in order to ensure that you have the that you can do it in one continuous line. Well, I'll move quickly because I don't think I have a lot of time, but I just want to talk another topic, is the relation of Kolam with computer science. And so this, I learned about a computer scientist, Gibbs Siromoney, and his wife, Rani Siromoney, that had been concerned with the use of columns in computer science. And I was sort of searching for what they were doing, and to my surprise, I actually found the web page with information about them in the Chennai Mathematical Institute, which is a place that I have visited many times, and in a sense where this project, this Indo-European collaboration that involved the Tata Institute, that Claudia mentioned, the Tata Institute and the Chennai Mathematical Institute, and the Bangalore, the Indian Institute of Science, and other institutions in Europe, Oxford, Paris, Madrid, Aarhus. This was the context of all this. So I was surprised to see this in the web page of one of these institutions. And so the fact is that computer scientists found that Kolam provided fantastic material for what is called picture languages. So these are like natural languages or computer languages. So the picture languages are made of a restricted set of basic units and specific formal rules for putting the units together. And so the Kolam designs provided a fantastic possibilities for exploring these language pictures. And so this formal languages was of great interest, in particular, through the work of the linguist Noam Chomsky at the end of the 50s. And so let me explain this. I will just tell you what it is, and I'll give you an example. And so a formal language starts with an alphabet, which is a set of symbols. I'll give you an example in just in a few minutes. And then an axiom that is starting a string of symbols. You start with a certain string of symbols, and then you have some rewriting rules. So that tell you how to create a new string of symbols. And the outcomes is the strings of symbols that result from applying these rewriting rules. Yeah, this looks very abstract. It is very abstract, actually. Don't be scared if you... but a picture language is obtained by translating the symbols that you have here into pictures or moves. And the column picture languages are hence concise statements of algorithms for generating columns. So this formal language gives you an algorithm to actually construct these columns. It's actually the other way around, in the sense that these people saw the column and say, oh, this can be done in an algorithmic way. And this is what, to some extent, many of these women are doing, are performing this algorithm. An algorithm is a way of doing things in a precise fashion. So, this way of thinking of column actually make some of the aspects of column, in particular, the growth patterns, more visible, right? So let me give you this example. And the example has to do with a very, very famous column. It's called the Anklets of Krishna. And so in the alphabet, you have these symbols, which is a move, R1, R2, R3, and so on. In fact, there is another one that I want to include, which is just a straight line that I will call F, right? And so, in fact, for the production of the Anklets of Krishna, of all this alphabet that we have here, I could have spare you all this, because I will only need 3 of the symbols. This F, which is a straight line, arg1 and R3. Arg1 is this, you move to the right, and R3 is this loop in the clockwise sense. And so here's the axiom. The axiom is, so everything is going to be done with these 3 symbols, with these 3 moves, right? So, and the starting point is this thing, I tell you, R1, F, R3, F, R3, F, R3, F, R1. And starting with this, I tell you, look, whenever you see F, just replace it for an F. Whenever you see R1, replace it by all this, all this row of symbols, right? And whenever you see R3, you just replace it by all this straight of symbols. And so, okay, here's what happens when you apply these rules to this. You see R1 is replaced by all this, right, which is this, and F is left alone, right? R3 is replaced by all this, as we said, and so on, right? And so when you perform this in movements, you, let me actually tell you that the axiom is simply the production of this little column. And when you perform the rewriting rules once, you obtain this one. And when you do it twice, you obtain this. So you can see this is a fantastic, it's telling you what are the basic constituents of the anklets of Krishna. And if you go on, you actually observe the exponential growth of this column, right? So, like you can also perform what is called the snake column. This is one in which you can see actually there is a single, one single curve, but there are no crossings, right? 0 is an even number for some people, and so this is is a Cambric column, does not have cell intersection. And this can be generated, this column here, by using actually what is called turtle geometry and smoothing the process. And so in a similar fashion, you can create an alphabet and some axiom and so on, and you can see and you can do it, as I say, with is like a turtle is moving on the floor in a mechanical way, producing these kind of things, and you can smooth it and you get the snake column. I am running out of time, and so I had something else that I wanted to tell you, which is related to the so-called Fibonacci numbers. And I won't have time to tell you about this, but let me say these are columns that are based on the famous golden ratio. And this is something that, as I say, I don't have time, so I guess this is a great excuse for having another talk in person at the ICTS, I think. And so these golden numbers have ubiquitous in nature and in Western art. And I learned this from actually a physicist that was a professor at the Tata Institute for Fundamental Research in Mumbai. That was well known to my dear colleagues Ramanan, Narasimhan, and others. And he passed away before I had relatively recently, before I had the opportunity to meet him. But so he wrote some very nice papers where he explains how these Fibonacci numbers, you can produce columns based on the Fibonacci numbers. So I'll go quickly through this and just finish my presentation with something that has already been mentioned by Claudia, and is the relation of Kolam with ethnomathematics. And so this term, ethnomathematics, was coined as far as I understand, by the Brazilian mathematician and educator Ubiratan D'Ambrosio. And it can be defined in several ways, but is the relation somehow between mathematics and culture. and often associated with cultures with no written expression. Certainly that's not the case for India. There are fantastically written expressions, but in a sense, many of the people that perform this have, are not do not necessarily have this formal education. And so two other people that cultivated ethnomathematics and that in particular explored the Kolam were Masha Asher, and defined ethnomathematics as the study of mathematical ideas of traditional peoples, or as expressed by Paulos Gerdes, Dutch and Mozambican ethnomathematician, the study of mathematical ideas and activities as embedded in the cultural context, in contrast to the culture-free and universal approach to mathematics that is dominant in academia. I mean, when I go to India, I have been going to India for many years now, more than 20 years, and to collaborate with my dear friends. And we talk about this universal sort of mathematics, something that I from Madrid can discuss with someone in India and Chinese. But when you think of mathematical ideas embedded in the cultural context, that is a different way of thinking. And so that makes the realization that many mathematical ideas are very valuable, even though they are not in the academic treated, they are not performed academically. However, ethnomathematics, in a sense, is a way of an academic approach, if you sense, to study these things, right? And so Kolam is a great example of a theme in ethnomathematics, and provides a sort of it's a great example of the way that mathematical ideas in a traditional setting can reach beyond their own cultural boundaries. We're discussing now about this in beyond the boundaries of the situation, and enrich, actually contribute to academic interest. Because of these problems, there are like the Fibonacci column. I don't think that many women do perform, say, oh, I'm going to do a Fibonacci column. Probably they do it without realizing. But the fact is that you can now pose the problem of creating this kind of columns, and that gives rise, like the Fibonacci column of Professor Narnam, to interesting problems in combinatorics and what is called group theory. So in conclusion, columns represent a beautiful fusion of art and science, religion and philosophy, the eternal and the ephemeral, the material and the spiritual. And so let me just finish here with some references that you can look at, and there's only a few, and they are, in particular, I realize I haven't put the books by Gerdes, but they're beautiful books to look at. And thank you. And Nandri.
Thank you so much, Oscar, for a wonderful presentation. It's really fascinating how this is just connected to so many areas of knowledge in mathematics and language and science and so on. So I'll go to the questions again. So there are several questions here. Maybe I'll start off with a couple of questions which are more, I think, connected to your presentation on the mathematical aspects, and then I'll go back to some more general questions which are. So there were some questions earlier, I think, which are for Claudia. So, I mean, of course, both of you feel free to answer as you feel fit, but I just will, yeah, I'll try to indicate who maybe can go first. So, let me see here. So if, yeah, so Mira S says, if you look at this as a graph traversal problem, and I think this refers to the KAAPI column, is it possible to estimate the number of distinct patterns that are possible given a specific number of arrangements of pulleys, dots?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And let me mention two answers to that. Actually, as I said before, the context of this project was in this Indo-European collaboration, mathematical collaboration funded by the European Commission, that I was very fortunate to coordinate and to enjoy with all my colleagues in India and other colleagues in Europe. And this collaboration is actually, the key word is moduli. And moduli is a word that refers to studying some space of the structures of certain kind. So in a certain sense, this question can be rephrased by saying whether we can actually understand what is the moduli of columns given some characteristic classes that are the pulley, right? And some topological numbers. Sorry, I don't want to get technical, but the point is, this is a problem that has been approached. There is a very nice paper by two Japanese mathematicians, and that is addressing this problem. Of course, you have to put limits and to the question. It's not just, you know, not just number of points, but certain arrangements and what are the rules and so on and so forth. And in some situations, you can actually come up with an answer that that again involves very sophisticated mathematics. Another example that I already mentioned is the one of the Fibonacci columns. And this is exactly the point of this Fibonacci columns, is that how can you construct very larger columns, actually can be columns, from these basic blocks in the basic blocks, you know, in the Fibonacci. So here's a Fibonacci situation. Sorry, I just got rid of it. And so how can I, by producing a column here and producing another one here, and then translating this one in these other places, create other columns? In how many ways can I do it? And so this is exactly a problem that is analyzed by using combinatorics and group theory, as I mentioned before. And in fact, this is an example of several ways you can do it in this particular situation I'm saying. So in other words, this gives rise to interesting mathematical problems. You have to put restrictions to the question, and hopefully you will come up with an interesting answer, I'm sure. Yes, right. I hope I have answered.
So I guess in the general case, it's just intractable to answer it without any putting further restrictions, right? Is that the...
Yes, I mean, you know, Pranav, you know this very well. It's like if you know, they ask you about moduli space of Calabi-Yaos or something, right, this and that, and you are not giving, you know, restrictions. So in general, I would say, you have to find a compromise between making the problem general enough and not too restrictive. Right? You know, this is what we mathematicians do very often. We cannot solve a problem and we create another one which is a little bit narrower and we can answer. That's nice because that sometimes helps us to understand the larger problem, right? But so I think you have to find a balance. To be honest with you, I haven't investigated in any depth those questions which I think are, for a mathematician, in fact, the most interesting ones. And except in this Fibonacci columns and these things of these two, I'm sorry, I don't remember the names of these Japanese people, but they in the title of the paper is something like the word topology and construction and column. So you can more or less guess.
Right. So maybe I'll go with another question in the similar vein from Shobana Narasimhan. So she asks, are Kambi pulley columns always based on a square grid of points in which each point has 4 nearest neighbors, or do some use a triangular lattice of points? Are there any other grids? My question is whether all 2D Bravais lattices are used.
Yeah. Hello, Shobana. It's great to have you with us. And hello, Narasimhan. Well, you can just, as I'm sure you have done, Shobana, just go and walk in the streets of Chennai and realize that indeed there are other sort of grids. Here, we have been concentrating on square grids, but there are all sort of grids possible. And whether you use all possible ones, I do not know. That's an interesting question again. And a question that very ethnomathematical question in the sense that can provoke interesting mathematics. But certainly there are triangular, hexagonal, pentagonal. And in some of the pictures of Claudia, I think you could actually perceive this other grids and actually an interesting relation with the dual grids. But this is a bit technical for many people. So maybe at some point, Shobana, we can discuss this.
So another question, I think this question is for Claudia. So it was asked in the earlier part. So it says, there are some psychological effects of Rangoli. The mind gets refreshed and, so one feels joyous when you look at Rangolis and so on. So do mathematical patterns and symmetry, do they have some effect? Have you observed that they have some effect, on the psychological state of mind? And perhaps I'll interpret the question to also mean that, is there a correlation between certain types of Rangolis and certain moods and states of mind?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Actually, it is. There is another kind of column, which is called yantra, and it is more related to religious performances, and it is full of geometry and sacred, colorful combinations. And for sure, I'm pretty sure all these patrons, not just from Rangoli and from Kolam, as they are so close to what I can understand what is a state of meditation, I'm pretty sure that if one have the chance, not just to perform a Rangoli or a Kolam, and just if one has the chance to see it, it gives you some kind of peace or kind of relaxation, because of that's the purpose of that. So yeah, I do agree on what you said. It has a psychological effect on the person around it, and also for sure there are some other aspects that we perhaps maybe that I'm not in contact with, more related to things like perceptive or sensitive things, because when one is it is a specific word in anthropology, which is enculturation. When one is grown in a particular culture, so it's like we have different windows in our mind and in our soul, in our hearts, open to perceive what's going on around. So I think it's with Kolam and all these painting on the floor painting expressions, I think they have this component also, and they can really affect. I mean, I feel very happy when I see a Kolam from the beginning, performing from the beginning, from the dots until the end, and while it's created around, it's also, I can say, affecting me, because there is always joy and beautiness around.
Yeah. Maybe can I add something?
Absolutely, yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Adding to what Claudia said, and precisely, I'm moving my screen. I don't know if you still see it, but is these Fibonacci numbers, right? And the fact that they are ubiquitous in architecture, in painting, Leonardo da Vinci, in poetry, and in nature, in the how some flowers grow and spiral shapes. So the fact is that symmetry is very intrinsically related to nature and to art, and we seem to experience pleasure and peace when we see something particularly symmetric of that has certain proportions. You know, I haven't gone as far as having the desk that I am on just being constructed as a golden rectangle. following the golden ratio, but it's in principle, you experience something nice when you see some rectangle that has this golden ratio. And so the same applies to other symmetries and other colors, or to music, you know. I mean, that is universal thing.
Yeah. So another question, again for Claudia, this was from the first part of the talk. So I think the name is, I'm just looking for the name. Yeah, Aparna Krishnan asks, it seems that most women stand or bend over while laying the kolam rather than squatting down. It feels like it would be hard on the back and harder to do standing up. So is this just a matter of preference, or is there some significance to the fact that they are always standing up and not squatting on the ground?
I have to say I had the same question when I saw all these the movements. I was quite impressed, but then while I was just looking at them and talking to them, I found out that there is this special way of doing the bend. Is one of the yoga position which is very used to do the what's called, I forgot the name, the sun raising salutation. So then my friend Dejanti, I put some picture of her, she explained to me that there is a special way to do the bend down. So it's more like you are stretching the back of your body, and it was amazed. I was amazed about it because, for example, the most complicated column can be made in maybe 1 hour, and the lady is there for 1 hour, and they have no problem at all. I mean, it's a matter of practice. When you are a girl, when you are a little child, you are set on the floor, and you can also see on the contest that there are some women and men also that they are on their knees. But I mean, to do this bend is a matter of practice because it's like a global thing with meditation, kind of exercise also. And so there is not a problem. But I had the same question the first time I saw it because I said to myself, oh my God, it has to be complicated, but it is not. It is not.
Right. Yeah, another question, I guess this would be for both of you. So maybe Claudia can go first and then Oscar. So Netravati asks, well, first of all, Netravati says, interesting talk, and then asks, I'm not sure if I'm asking the right question. Can we look at tessellations or Escher's graphic work as being similar to column patterns?
I think it's more like Oscar's.
Yeah, so Oscar, go ahead.
I see. Well, it's interesting you ask that. Before the pandemic started, we had programmed for March an activity here at the Institute of Mathematical Sciences on ethnomathematics to accompany the exhibition at the Autonomous University by Claudia. And one of the talks was precisely about tessellations, right? So so tessellations, again, the idea of symmetry, right, is fundamental, right? And and so in that sense, they are sort of have similarities with column. On the other hand, I mean, depends on what sort of tessellations. I mean, the Muslim tessellations, or you go to Granada or in India and so on, these are pieces of art that are not so ephemeral. I mean, something which is special about column is that it is ephemeral, and also these designs on the sand, right? So you can just see photographs, right, and or videos or something, but tessellations are produced and sometimes I think, like in Granada, for example, with a very specific knowledge of the mathematics behind in some cases. I mean, there's the Arabs that populate Spain for 7 centuries, for example, were quite quite knowledgeable about the mathematics. They transmitted actually Greek mathematics, and yeah, so it's in a sense part of the same thing, but it has also many differences, I think.
I would like to add something that is not it's just to connect it to the Sona question. Then yeah, and you mentioned it again, and I read the question while you were talking, and the question is specific on if there is any relation, just a part of what I said. I remember we saw, like, could be like 5 years ago, a wonderful documentary by BBC where they were trying to trace how was the immigration from Africa to South India. So at some point, in a very short phrase, the documentary talked about this, no? That besides all the ADN traces and so on, in Kerala particularly, they found that there are many cultural expressions linked to what's going on in Africa, in this part of Congo, Angola, and so on. So yes, there it seems. I mean, there are no to say like archaeological proofs at this moment, but as the researchers are developing on time, so perhaps we will find maybe in 10 or less years that there are specific traces of all these way that all the path that the people made from Mother Africa going to India from the south. And because when we human travel, we travel, as I said, with all our enculturation and our significance, and the way we behave is in our bodies. So sometimes we just need nothing, just ask to move around the world with what we have inside. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, in that connection, actually, I had a question that was on my mind, which is, so there's one way in which this kind of information travels, which is people moving from one place to the other and so on. But also, since Oscar mentioned this universal, the use of formal languages and how Kolam can be thought of as a kind of language. One of the things in Chomsky's theory, I think, was this, I don't know very much about it, but I think there's this concept of universal grammar, which is that all cultures, there is some common core to the grammar of any language. And I was wondering whether in all the different columns, not columns, sorry, all the different art forms across the world and the different ways of, expressing themselves, do you see some common underlying sort of grammar of the, of this language, of whether it is Kolam or some other form of art like the Sona art form? Is that something that has been observed in this sort of visual sort of language? Not that was my.
Well, that's interesting, and actually is in a sense linked to what Claudia was saying. I have been reading in the last few years a lot about the human species. I mean, like Homo sapiens and Neanderthal, and the fact that in the last few years there is the other human species, Floriensis, and others that have been overlapping with sapiens. And I mean, this is a different scale of time probably, but somehow the point is that in a sense we very often come from a common thing, right? And as we move, different migrations and so on, things develop in a different way. So so there is something perhaps universal in that it is originally written almost in our DNA. And I don't know if this is what Noam Chomsky referred to. I haven't actually, I'm not familiar with so much with his, I read years ago, but you can somehow see this different avatars, right, of things that are similar and that make us humans feel in a similar way and relate to similar things, the sacred, to the religious, to the beauty, to the rituals, sometimes to the practical things to find food or something. So it's not, maybe there is, as Claudia is saying, maybe there is, in the future, we'll see connections, right, between, it's difficult to know how far these traditions go back. And I mean, some of these migrations from Africa to India go back many, many, tens of years, thousands of years ago. And so preceding actually, well, certainly preceding writing languages, but not preceding other manifestations of, mathematical manifestations. These are mathematical manifestations that are probably intrinsic in the human nature. And so how a primitive man was designing a certain stone tool was a mathematical problem that I'm sure that somehow he or she was resolving. I don't know.
Right.
Well,
So have there been, yeah, go ahead, Claudia, please.
sorry. I would like to add just a few things about it, because I recently was actually study some things about this language and grammatic with the Chomsky theory. And as you said, Pranav, it seems that actually there is some like a grammar language or grammar structure. And there is something obvious that what I'm going to say, but maybe 1,000 years ago it was, or many years, thousands of years ago, it was not so obvious. But what happens with geometric is that it gives you all the geometrical designs give us a mental structure. So it is easy to repeat one triangle and then another triangle. So what I was reading about Chomsky in this grammar language is that it seems that there could be like mathematics and geometry were the first kind of language of communication, and also music. So it's not that human beings, when we have all our body in the right condition to perform voice, we were not communicating before. We were communicating, but how? So is this theory? As you can imagine, all these in social sciences are theories, but it has a lot of sense, because perhaps could be easier for ancient man just to, or ancient people just to put some dots on the floor and to trace some straight lines and to make maybe some sounds close to music, trying to imitate nature, and then trying to put together some understanding that they were having of their life at that time. And as music, we had the privilege to have it recorded just from 120 years ago. But before, there were, if you don't have a written thing, what did you do? You have all what you could print on the floor, on the walls. So yes, I'm pretty sure of what you said, Pranav, is like this. Is this grammar language is embodied in all the expressions around the world, all the expressions which are related not just to more accurate mathematical concepts, but also to art expressions. What was first, the egg or the hen? We don't know, but it seems there is this link.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I actually have many more questions about that, but maybe for another time, because yeah, we'll run out of time here. So I'll just ask a couple more questions. Then I think there are many more questions coming in, but we may not have time to take all of them. So I'll ask a couple, read out a couple more questions, and then we'll probably wind down. So I'll club together two or three questions here. So Hari Prasad Manjunath asks, are Kolam studied from a knot theory perspective? And Vishesh Bhatt adds to that, I had the same question. There are some resemblances to knot diagrams. And okay, so this is slightly unrelated, but of a similar type, this question. So Meera S asks, have there been any attempts to use functional geometry to algorithmize the Kolam process?
To the first question, yes, is you know, for one thing, knots are related to graph theory, and so graph theory is related to column. So you can find a bridge, right? And I mean, knots are typically curves that live in a three-dimensional. I mean, the usual knots in the three-dimension space, right? You can consider knots in higher dimensions, but in 3 dimensions. And so column is something that is 2-dimensional, right? So you, in a sense, but projecting knots and things, you can again associate graphs and deduce important things about knot invariance and things like this that are very connected actually to physics and to geometry. A specific investigation on that, I don't know anything about it. And to be honest, I am actually quite surprised of the fact that there hasn't been so much academic study of the mathematics of column that you would imagine. In a sense, I mean, we all know how wonderful Indian mathematics is, right? The Indian mathematical school that we all admire, but I'm referring, of course, to the universal mathematics that we all discuss and talk about, and you may expect that somehow Indian mathematicians may be interested in exploring these questions. However, sometimes this calls more the attention of foreigners, because perhaps South Indian mathematician will be so familiar with this that take it for granted, right? And it's like we all do for certain things. So I don't know about specific studies. I haven't, as I say, it must be related because the relation to graph theory and so on, but I do not know. About the second question, I'm afraid I cannot answer it at all. But again, so I think these are all interesting questions and invitations to mathematicians to explore these things. And so I think there is a wonderful source of mathematical problems in Kolam, not mentioning, I mean, it has already been mentioned, but also a great potential for educational purposes, right? And to stimulate the spatial vision of children and so on, that so it can be so useful for many things. So, but as as I say, not so much has been actually done. And I think this is maybe starting in a sense, really in a more serious way. So, so I hope this will develop in the future.
Thanks a lot, Oscar. Claudia, would you like to comment further on the last point Oscar made about the role in education that that this could play? You know, this more tactile, physical relationship to mathematics and.
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, I mentioned that briefly, but what I've seen in the alternative schools I've been in contact with in Spain is that what the teachers want to explore with children related to mathematics and science in general is to have the continuity of the sense of touching. So what happens? We have several ways to learn things. When one is a child, we were more used to learn things just putting things on our mouth or touching or just spreading all around with food. So related to Kolam, what as a team of teachers are exploring now is how can these kind of drawings, not with here in Madrid or in Spain, we don't use rice flour, but just put it just to paint with these dots on the paper, or maybe when the children go outside and play on the sun, how to help them to develop all the spatial way of thinking, all the geometrical concepts, just to have it inside their mind. Because after that, when you give the children theory, it's easy for them to make their relation. Oh, this theory, it is what we performed last week playing with these drawings. So I think it's a very, very interesting tool to add on the way we try to teach children mathematics and geometry, and also the way of concentration. Because what I saw every time when I saw the ladies performing the Kolam is that they were very silent. They were just so concentrated, and I think it's a tool very needed at these moments when there are so many distractions with devices and so on. So I think it's something interesting to develop. I saw it in I went with my friend Jayanti to one school in Chennai. She was just giving an introductory lesson to girls and boys about Kolam, basic Kolam painting, and they were fascinated about that. So I think yes, we all around the world, the people that we have kind of contact with this are trying to think or to figure out how to make a formal proposal to add this on education.
See, that's wonderful. I think there's a lot of scope here to do, a lot of innovation in terms of how we teach mathematics. Yeah. So yeah, I think maybe there are more questions, and I personally have many more questions myself. But I think in the interest of of time, and maybe we should keep all that for your visit in the future for the next such interaction, when maybe we will have a physical exhibit also of your photography. That would be really nice, as we had planned. So I'd like to thank you both again for wonderful presentations, and also for staying back and answering all our questions. It's been really great. Before we sign off, I just want to make a small announcement. So the ICTS outreach team has launched a new lecture series called Vigyan Adda, which is again a sort of informal space where we will have talks by some of our faculty and so on science topics. And the first talk in that series is going to be, so this will be mostly talks aimed at undergraduate people in in science related fields, but also it's open to public with an interest in science. And one of our faculty, Suvrat Raju, is going to give the first talk, and that will be on Friday, December 18th at 4:30 p.m. And the title of the talk is Black Holes and the Reversibility of Time. It's about some recent developments in that area on black holes and the information paradox. So you will all, the exact, the details about the talk will be sent out through the usual ICTS mailing list for outreach. So keep an eye out for that. That's on Friday, December 18th at 4:30. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and many thanks to Oscar and Claudia for the presentations and for the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you to you.
Have a great
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Pranat.
Thank you to you. Thank you to everyone.